In unserem letzten Vortrag vor der Diskussionsrunde haben wir die beiden Experten Mark Finch und Gary Cole, die nähern sich dem Thema der intelligenten Nutzung von Daten am Beispiel von Bing Maps und gehen der Frage nach, wie Kundinnen und Kunden dort eigene Daten hinterlegen können, damit eigene Lösungen anbieten können. Der Vortrag hat die Besonderheit, dass er auf Englisch vorgetragen wird. Deshalb würde ich jetzt an dieser Stelle auch meine Moderation switchen und bitte Sie darum, auch Ihre Fragen dann gleich in Englisch zu stellen, damit das für uns alle einfacher ist. Now let me introduce the speakers. Mark heads up the mapping team at Grey Matter, where he's worked for over 12 years. He specializes in geospatial platforms, licensing, and all aspects of the project lifecycle. Mark has worked with Microsoft Bing Maps since 2008 and has been integral in growing the global Bing Maps business in regions outside North America. Hello, Mark. Gary is CEO of Lumilinks, a data insight company producing strategy, sales, and marketing predictions using behavioral and narrative economics. Gary has been in technology for 10 years and has a passion for using it to inform business strategy. So hello, Gary, and hello, Mark. Nice to meet you.
Good afternoon,
and also, hi. And also the question for you, do you remember the first project in your career in the field of geodata?
Wow, that's a good question. I don't have a specific memory of the actual project. I mean, back when we first started with Bing Maps, a lot of the projects that we're working on were around transport systems, but more and more these days we're looking at Bing Maps for use in business intelligence type applications. But early on, I would say it was more around the transport systems.
You, Gary?
For myself, it was actually one that I'm going to reference in the talk today, which was around tracking the movement of cargo vessels around the world, which was a fascinating project. But it was eye-opening, and it certainly is the main reason that I actually started and worked with Lumilinks. So.
Okay, thank you for sharing this, and I would say the stage is yours.
Thank you. Does everyone see that okay? Good stuff. So yes, today's session is around turning business intelligence into location intelligence. First of all, I'd like to give you a bit of background about Grey Matter. As Stephanie had already alluded to in her introduction, Grey Matter have been providing Bing Maps to, well, both end users and to developers for around about 12 years now. We are one of 2 distributors worldwide, and we got a team of people who are exclusively in the geospatial and location services arena. We've worked in partnership with DDS for a very long time. DDS were really early adopters of Bing Maps, so we've been working very closely with them throughout this period. So the agenda for today is some information around Bing Maps, the services that are available, and then I'll pass you over to Gary, who will show you how Lumilinks are using the Bing Maps platform to some really good effect, and then we'll finish up with some Bing Maps licensing Q&A. So, I mean, it's estimated around about 80% of business data has some sort of location-based context to it. If you think about the data that you all have in your databases, you know a lot about your customers, you know a lot about your suppliers. All that information has some sort of location-based context to it. So, just at its very simplest, maybe their addresses. Now, Bing Maps makes better use of that data because it actually allows you to visualize that data on a map using the information you have already captured in your databases alongside other data sets which are available in Bing Maps or data sets that you may buy in from other parties as well. So there are many more services than I have put on this slide here, but I think these are the ones which are most pertinent to BI type applications. So I'll just take you through the 5 that I have listed here. So the locations one, that's location recognition. With locations, you can really supercharge your applications with the geocoding services that are available within Bing Maps, which gives you really insightful information about a specified location. So, for example, if you send the coordinates, that could be a latitude and a longitude to Bing Maps, the Bing Maps location recognition returns a really comprehensive description of the location along with other information such as points of interest. So when you give the service an address or a lat long, not only does it return the location, but it also gives you a whole load of additional information of what businesses, etc., are around that location that you're looking at. The spatial data services, the key capabilities with spatial data services, or SDS as we call it, are batch geocoding, points of interest or POI data, and most importantly to my mind, the ability to store your data and expose your data from the Bing Maps services. When we talk about geocoding, what we mean is taking an address, so it could be just a postcode or a zip code, could be a complete address, or it could be just a partial address, maybe just a city name, and it takes that information that you've given it and returns a lat long and places that address on a map for you. And when we talk about reverse geocoding, that's the opposite of that. So you can give the system a lat long and it'll make sense of that and it will return an address to you. So the data sources that you input to the spatial data services are initially only accessible through the service via only your own Bing Maps key. However, you can make those public available if you want to, so that any Bing Maps key can access that data if required. In short, your data can be kept private, so just for your own use, or with just by the ticking a checkbox. You can make that publicly available, depending on your own requirements. You can also submit large numbers of addresses or GPS coordinates to SDS for batch geocoding. So if you have a large spreadsheet, XML file or whatever, you can upload that to SDS and then it'll return the results back to you, which you can then use your own spatial data, keep that in SDS for your own use, or even retrieve your own POI data from the services after that. Outside of your own POI, you can also query POI from Bing's public data sources. So there are plenty of data sources already in the service. And there's publicly available data sources such as administrative boundary data, state and country boundaries, which you can use with your own applications. And of course, you can purchase additional data sets and shapefiles from your friendly partners at DDS for uploading to SDS too. The local search and local insights services. So local insights does what it says on the tin. It provides insights into businesses that can be reached. For example, if you want to put in information about a business, you can say, okay, what businesses can I reach if I'm traveling by car, or if I'm on foot, or if I'm on public transport? And you can score the attractiveness of those locations based on the proximity of the POI data that's there. And it really makes it easy for you to to determine how close people are to things that are important to them. So that all of that information you can show on a map, which is really useful information. There's also a time zone API. Working with time zones can get really complicated because time zones are different across the world, and also time zones change more frequently than we expect. And different regions even have different ways in the way that they apply those daylight saving times. So Bing Maps time zone brings ease to that chaos and makes it easy for you to find a time zone and daylight savings times for a location by querying an address or a lat long coordinates that you've input, and it can also convert those date time stamps to local time zones with daylight saving time information for your local area. And finally, the auto-suggest API. We often misspell words when we're typing phrases into a web search, but if with auto-suggest, it's used to return a list of suggested entities based on a user's particular query. So that could be a part query, so it'll actually bring back suggestions as you are typing that in. And the service can return entity types as well, such as addresses, including the roads that those addresses are on, and points of interest too. So that's a bit about the services that are available. As I said, there are many other services available too, but those are the ones I think are pertinent for today. So what I would like to do now is just hand you over to Gary. Gary will give you a bit of information about Lumilinks and show you how Bing Maps is being used within Power BI.
Thank you, Mark. So, sorry, Mark, just are we keeping on your presentation? Or...
Yeah, I've got 2 slides for you here if just want to share with me again, Stephanie.
Yeah, if we can keep on Mark's presentation, and then I'll take it when we go to a demo. So I suppose today, and thank you for the invite of being here today. We're a partner of Grey Matters in the UK. Lumalinks has been active as a business for about 2 years now. We're just starting to expand and work in a broader European region. So it's a great privilege to be with you all. Effectively, Lumalinks is a science-based business. We use mapping tools because it's a really great way of engaging people that don't normally use data on a daily basis. Part of the work that I'll show you on the next slide, it hopefully will make that more explanatory. So, but just give you a little bit of background on Lumalinks. Our theory that we use is complexity theory, or some people can also relate to causal inference. So causal inference is around how, if you move one object, what happens to the several objects that move around it. Now that might sound complicated, or anyone that know those methodologies, well, certainly not easy, but it's understandable. I think that what you can do with mapping data is that you're able to actually enable individuals, whether it be from a sales, marketing, or a strategy perspective, really take huge amounts of data sets or very small amounts of data. And that's one of the things that I always try and express, is whether it's large or small amounts of data, and be able to mix those data sets together and then be able to get really good results and be able to action that on a daily basis. So Mark, if I can just move on to the next slide, if that's all right. Thank you, sir. So yes, here is a couple of examples of the work that we've done, and I'll talk you through each of them very briefly, and then I'll bring you on to a demo of one of our demo sites, which hopefully just give you a live version of Power BI and the way that we use it, the mapping tools within Power BI. So if I start on the bottom left, this is the project that I mentioned at the start. It was the one that really got me interested in using geospatial data for businesses. Effectively, we did this work for a ship broker who make trades between cargo vessel owners and distributors. Effectively, Bloomberg have been tracking vessels, cargo vessels around the world for a long time, and they do it very effectively and very well. What we were able to do with Bing Maps is we were able to create a visualization layer that enabled us to do predictive analytics on top of that. So this shipbroker effectively wanted to know before anyone else the estimated time of arrivals of particular vessels in what particular port before anyone else. And so it was a really great way to be able to visualize that and to give that into the hands of the shipbrokers themselves with obviously some outputs and some information. So in the bottom right corner around logistics, one of the things that we were able to do is map several different data sets to give people a management control panel so they can watch their vehicles as they move around the UK in this instance, and around certain kind of doctrine points. So there were particular issues of interest when they stopped, when they moved, how much their predictive fuel remaining fuel was, those type of things. So again, you know, hopefully quite interesting, the fact that you can mix two data sets together and really use it in a way that can tell you from a management or a leadership perspective what to do. In the top right, this information is around healthcare. So it was around taking GP surgeries, doctors' surgeries in the UK and comparing them against other surgeries and finding which two looked most similar. And it isn't normally the ones that were next to each other. It was really interesting work for both pharmaceutical companies and the healthcare trust themselves, so they were able to allocate resources. And again, in the top right, left corner around financial fraud, I don't have the map available because it's not ours to show, but the work that we did was all around signal data and locations. So you're able to gauge financial fraud, the likelihood of fraud or propensity of fraud based on mapping, and then normal other services in there around world clouds and those type of things. So if I just take control of the screen, if you're able to switch over to me. Great, is everyone able to see my, let me just, is everyone able to see my screen? Mark, can you give me a nod if you can?
Yeah, you've got your whole desktop actually, Gary.
Oh, okay, great. I'll just share like this then. Okay, so assuming that you can see that okay. I don't think it's ideal that it's desktop because it keeps flipping between. Let me see if I can change.
We've got the audience overview.
Oh, you have got the audience overview?
Yeah, yeah.
Great, okay, perfect. So effectively, this is some work that we did around sales and marketing. We were able to group people's clients by each of the by particular segments, which is a very Me Too type service. But the interesting thing around this is what you can do and how far you can go past that and integrating other different data sets. So particularly of interest here, we were able to plot all of these their businesses on here, and then we're able to do different things around mapping out all of those businesses, looking at their propensity to spend, looking at their propensity to churn based on their product that they buy, based on timings of their invoices and those type services, and then coming into some additional points, particularly working for a insurance company. The bit that the Bing Map services in Power BI enables you to do is we were able to also import certain data points. So here's a few examples of flood risk data, council band data, thatched houses. Now this particular insurance company sold insurance services to particular to just these type of specialist arrangements, and you're able to actually create marketing campaigns particularly around just those services. and being able to identify each of those actually can inform quite a bit of quite a bit of your strategic planning, as well as then looking at other businesses, whether it be B2C or B2B in the work that you're able to do. So in this case, again, just unfortunately, it's just a UK example. Our European examples I'm not able to show, but you're able to plot out all of the different businesses in the UK. You're able to then group them into different groups, and then naturally you can able to target market them on Google ads or Facebook or whichever type of medium or outreach you're able to do, but based on a geographic segmentation opposed to a generalized segmentation in that sense. So naturally, there's lots of other points on there that you can do around client segmentation and those type of things, but naturally with it being geospatial, I'll probably limit and stop there for the moment and pass back to Mark.
Thank you, Gary. So yeah, as you can see, Lumilinks are making really good use of some standard Microsoft technology. So the Power BI from Microsoft, and obviously the Bing Maps platform as well from Microsoft, but then adding a layer of really clever stuff on top of that. So if you guys want to do something similar, I would suggest getting in touch with Andres, who will be able to help you with both the Bing Maps licensing and Power BI licensing. Also, I'm sure Gary will join me in saying that if there's any projects that you want assistance with from Lumilinks, Gary would be more than happy to help you with those too. So again, reach out to Andreas, who should be able to help you with that. Great stuff. So next is a Q&A session. So feel free to ask your questions, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mark and Gary. I already got some questions. For Mark, could you please give us an overview of what data and feature updates are about to come for Bing Maps in the next couple of months, especially up-to-date satellite and aerial imagery of interest, but also recent point of interest updates?
Sure. Okay. So aerial imagery, there's petabytes of data being captured and updated, which is updated every month. Microsoft don't actually give a roadmap of which regions they're going to update next, but as I say, it is updated month on month. So yeah, you'll be sure to see some more up-to-date imagery, for especially around the Europe region over the coming months. POI data, I don't have any particular information on new updates on POI. Again, I haven't had a roadmap of that, but yeah, I can certainly see if I can find out and pass that information back to Andreas, who will hopefully be able to pass it out to your audience base.
Another one, how many customers are actually using SDS? Are there any common use cases?
I couldn't give you an actual number of customers using SDS. We have many hundreds, well, thousands of customers using Bing Maps. A percentage of those are using SDS, but I don't have actual data to hand. Common use cases are capturing your own data. So let's say, for example, you wanted to take a complete batch of all of your customers and upload that into SDS. You can do that using batch geocoding, and then use the tools that Gary has shared with us today to overlay all of that data onto Power BI applications. So there's no latency. All of the data is your own. You can add POI data to your own data and make real sense and get some real intelligence into what your customers are doing by using SDS.
We have also a question for Gary about data relevance. Tools like this can become very expensive if they are not used. How do you deal with this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So data relevance for me is all around how you make sure that data stays continually used, and a term that I think commonly is being used is around data transformation, and I think that it's a term that needs to evolve into data relevance. So it's a really good phrase. The big thing I think with anything like this is that it's got to start with the business objectives in mind. Is too many people are using or searching for the term under artificial intelligence, AI, or machine learning, and saying, how do I use that? And often I think it can come to the fault of the business because they're actually looking to advance. You've always got to start with your business objectives in mind. As in the case of the insurance company that I showed you, actually they were spending lots of money on marketing and advertising. And actually, if you think about the objective of what they wanted to do, their target market was very small, and actually using data, which isn't as expensive as it used to be, is, you know, in a way that's around your business objectives, I think then can enable you to keep it relevant for the individual that's going to use it, rather than actually just purchasing data and then trying to work out how it fits afterwards.
Mm-hmm. And another question for you, do you use a third party or external agency, or is it all internal resources?
Yeah, so there is most of the work that we do is our own. There's a big difference between skill sets of a data analyst, a data scientist, and a statistician. We've effectively got all of those in-house ourselves, but at the same time, we do sometimes naturally use partners. Our partnership with Grey Matter is a great example that sometimes that we do outsource. I think that's probably the same and linked to the data relevance question, in the sense that actually there's a specialism that if people use people in their specialism, they're able to have the emotional intelligence to say this is where we're going to be able to achieve and this is where we should actually partner. So yes, we do as businesses partner with people as well. Like I say, our bit is around that term, the analytics adoption curve, and then how you move people through, not just moving to the cloud, but then when you're on the cloud and maybe using whether it's Azure data services or another provider, how do you use those tools? And sometimes, you know, not everyone has all the capabilities, and that would just then align back to business objectives. So.
Okay, thank you. I have another one for you, Mark. Is Bing Maps a standard integration in Power BI, or do we need a separate license to use Bing Maps?
So you do get some basic functionality with Power BI. As soon as you want to start customizing things, you would need to purchase a license. Licenses are quite easy to purchase. You can create a free Bing Maps key for setting all of this up, and then once you go into production, you can purchase most likely be a per user or a per transaction license for this type of application. So yeah, so it's free to use to a certain extent, but then when you want to start adapting it, you need to get a license.
Okay, and I think one last question to you, Mark. Does Bing Maps have any other features outside of what has been presented today?
Yes, it does. So there's quite a few there as well. There's well, the routing. The routing APIs are one, so there's different types of routing API. There's routing if you just want to get a direction from A to B. There's matrix routing there as well. There's also isoline routing, which is time-based routing. So if you think about putting all your customers on a map, rather than saying I want all my customers within a 50-kilometer radius of where we are, you can say I want to show all my customers who are within half an hour of where we are if I drive by car or if I catch a train, and that'll draw a polygon around where you are rather than where a circle around where you are. So yeah, there are a load more APIs available, routing being one of those.
Okay, I think I'm checking all the channels that I'm having for question, but I think that was it. So thank you for Mark and Gary for your explanations. And I think at this point I can switch to German again.